Hi guys, really great to be here again at the NOAH conference. And I'd like to start by giving you a challenge. And this challenge is one of the most fundamental challenges of transportation. If you take a city, small city or a large city, what's the most efficient way of moving people in and around the city? Let's take an example of London. Yeah. Oh. Oops. Go back. OK. Yeah, sorry. So let's take an example of London. It's 5 a.m. now in London. Streets are empty. And soon, one of the biggest movement of people will take place. Millions, about 10 millions of people are commuting every day. Some going to school, some going tourist attractions, going to work. How do we go about optimize all of that? How many vehicles we need? What type of vehicles? Where they drive? Why this bus is turning right here and not left? And why it stops at that station at that particular time? Why there is a double-decker there and not a single-decker? When you're in a city using the public transit, you don't really understand that in the back end of that, there is a huge complex system that needs to manage all of that. So is this the most efficient way of moving people in a city, what we just saw? I'm Amos, CEO and co-founder of Optibus, and what I've just shown you is at the core of what we do. We are working with over 200 cities worldwide, working with public transit operators and cities to optimize the movement of vehicle drivers in the city. Work with some of the largest transit operators, and we raised so far $14.5 million, and we're growing very fast, about 3x year over year. So 3 facts about mass transit and public transit in general. First, it's a huge business. $500 billion market, at least worldwide. Europe alone has 57 billion journeys a year. It's at the core of every city. And third, and maybe most importantly, there is a lot of innovation happening around mobility, and you saw some companies here around autonomous mobility, around ride-sharing and so on, but really the mass transit is still waiting for the digital transformation. There are very few companies innovating in that space, although it's a huge market. Yeah. So you would assume there is some kind of a supercomputer that takes data from the city and find the most optimal way of moving people in and around the city. It's such a complex problem, at least I would assume there has to be some very sophisticated method of doing that. But after working with other cities, Europe, the US, Asia, we see that the way that they plan transportation is pretty much manual. These, by the way, real pictures taken from 3 different clients of us in 3 different regions in the world. What you see here, it's actually pieces of papers hanging on a wall. Or pieces of wood, and people are actually standing in front of these boards, moving pieces, trying to solve a complex puzzle, and when they're done, they have a plan of how to run transit in the city. That's pretty much the way it works in many, many places in the world. So we looked at it differently, and we said, let's use advanced technology, let's use AI, machine learning optimization, to solve this problem much more efficiently. And basically to create a continuous plan for city that optimizes transit on a day-to-day basis. So how does it work? On one hand, we have the demand. So the demand is where people need to go, move from one point to another, what the city needs to offer to their passenger. And on the other hand, we have the supply, all the vehicles, drivers, and so on. We're in the middle. We're matching those. And we are doing that using a technology that is able to answer the following questions among many others. How many vehicles are needed? Do we need 1,000? Do we need 800 vehicles? What type of vehicle? Do we need like a small van, a double-decker bus, a tram sometimes, or a mixture of those? Can we use electric vehicles? If we do, what kind of batteries? Where do we charge them? How long do we charge them? And so on. We have all these vehicles in the city that moving people, but where do they park? Do we put like a large parking space outside the city, or do we put like a smaller one inside the city? What about drivers? How many we need? What time they get to work? How much they're getting paid? When they get their break? And so on and so forth. Hundreds and hundreds of questions that are being answered by our optimization engine. So a bit about our technology. We use two main components. One is artificial intelligence. We learn from data in the city. We learn what works, what affects the quality of transportation in a city. And we use machine learning models to learn that. And then we embed those models into an optimization engine that is being able to optimize movement of vehicles and drivers in the city on a day-to-day operational basis. So working with city after city in the world, what we have discovered is that by optimizing movement of people in mass transit, we're actually only solving 10% of the problem. And that's because the other 90% are private cars. So this is data in the US. In the US, the situation is much more extreme than in Europe. In the US, 90% of people commute using private cars. We can't plan movement of private cars. We can't optimize those in a way that will benefit the city. But that's the situation. Those private cars, they're costing us a lot. So they're costing us in pollution. They're costing us in congestion. The price of congestion in the US alone is $300 billion a year. So we pay $300 billion for people sitting in traffic doing nothing. That's the cost. Now, it's not only costing us a lot, it's also costing individuals a lot. And transportation is the second most expensive household budget, right after housing, not too far from that. So I never owned a car. Where all my friends graduate from university, and I graduate as well, everyone went and bought a car. And I went as well to buy a car. And then I saw that a car costs, like if you look at the total cost of ownership of a car, it costs about $1,000 a month. So that's like buying an iPhone 10 every month just to get to work, which for me didn't sound like the most important thing you will do. But still, transportation is something we spend. It's almost the most expensive thing we spend money on. Now, if we look at the time, the commute time to work, and we see how long it takes to get to work, it's currently on 53 minutes, and adding one more minute every few years. So it's just getting worse and worse. And then, we ask ourselves, maybe the solution is in sharing, car sharing, carpooling, bike sharing, and so on. Like, we're all sharing now. There's so many startups and large companies dealing with on-demand ride sharing and so on. You would think that if you start sharing resources, obviously it will make things more efficient and it will maybe make the problem disappear. So actually, data shows us that if we look at average car occupancy, it's actually going down and down. We're now in 1.06. That's mean 94% of the time cars are with a single passenger. And we actually think this line will go even down and will even go below 1. And that's because of autonomous vehicles. So if you look at autonomous vehicles, the prediction is that 0.6 car occupancy rate. So 40% of the time, those cars will travel empty. Now compare that with mass transit that carries 50 people or hundreds of people, and has an average of 10% empty rides. But we actually think this can bring a huge opportunity, although it brings problem. It can bring opportunities. And the opportunity that we see is that for the first time, we are able, with fleets, with on-demand fleets, and especially with autonomous vehicles, we are able to plan transportation in cities in a way that will optimize both mass transit and on-demand transportation together, something that's haven't been done before. So I'd like to end by telling you a bit about our growth. I'm really proud of our team of 60 people that is being able to add one more city that is using our services on average every week. That means real city in the world where transportation, the city is being optimized, drivers and vehicles are doing things more efficient than they used to do it before in real life, using real vehicles every week. So thank you all for listening to my presentation. If you want to read more about Optibus, go to optibus.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much.